July 4th, 2023, and grateful for the opportunity to have this call. It is on our normal Tuesday time, so this is one out of every 7 years it falls on this, except for leap year. But it's about 5:30 Mountain Time, and grateful for the opportunity to be able to come with you and give a report out, as well as field general questions. Today we don't have a lot of folks as the offices were shut down, and we do have some folks in the hospital in different parts of the world, but we're grateful for those that are on. As mentioned, we'll just do a quick report out as to what's transpired over the last week. Also talk a little bit about what's going on the 4th of July, and maybe have some open discussion around that, and then any kind of just general questions that you might have. We are grateful for those that do help when it's appropriate. Most folks are not on right now, and we do have 3 different areas that are going. If you'd like to ask live questions, you can go to rippleeffect.clear.events, or you can go to Digital Town Hall or townhall.clear.events. As well as, well, actually, I think we've got another one open as well. Let me see. Yeah, so we've got Digital World open as well. So those are 3 different areas. Just raise your hand if you've got questions when the time is right, and just grateful for all you that are prepared. As a reminder, this is a private membership association. Some of the content herein is intended for private membership, as well as some of the statements that we make may be forward-looking and need to be able to preface that for those that are in the world, so to speak. I'll just leave it at that. The things that we'll talk about is around a simple model that basically combines decentralized systems that are accessed on access device like these that connect to decentralized storage. It may sound complicated to many, but in the end, it's really not that complicated. But we're grateful for those that are figuring it out. There's an adoption curve, and this actually hit one of the conversations that we had, not this week, but the week prior, around one guy said, these are key influential people. He says, I see the importance of decentralization, but come back to me in 2 years and show me countries running on it. And in my opinion, 2 years is too late, way too late. But it's interesting to see those that are actually early on the adoption curve and willing to drive awareness around, what are the topics? What is decentralization? What are encryption keys? How does it work? Why is it important? Just taking the time to understand it is what massive gratitude goes out to those that are on the front end of this. And, on one hand, it's actually good. We were talking about this a little bit before the call started. It's good that the work that Clear United and many are doing in the digital world and the different Clear companies and even some partners. We've got some real solid partners that are coming on now that are focused on decentralization. It's good that it's not necessarily in the limelight. I wonder how many folks really know about it, that probably are wanting to see it disappear. But it's good that we're able to operate at the rate that we're able to operate at, which is pretty dang quick. As you can see, we're coming to you live from the United States of America, as a lot of these recent calls have actually been coming from other parts of the world. I'm actually going to go into slideshow real quick so we get a little better presentation. So majority of the time for the last 6 months have been spent within the Pacific with different countries, namely 16 different countries in the Pacific, and primarily working with about half a dozen of them as far as getting cabinets, approval, parliaments, different systems, understanding what decentralization can actually offer, and then implementing it within those 4 countries. Actually, it's about 6 now. But the goal is to get 16 of them, as many of the 16.
Michael, you're on mute.
I might be on mute in, let's see which area people are in. I'm just on mute and you're part of the world, but that's okay. I'll go ahead and share a screen with you so you can catch up where you're at. Let's see here. Oops, what just happened?
I was trying the ripple effect link. Was that not working?
Yeah, there's many other rooms that are open and active, but somehow I just lost
No, I was saying I tried the ripple effect and waited like 10, 15 minutes and there was nothing there.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks on there, and we're streaming right now. I've just lost something. I'm trying to figure out what I
Okay.
lost.
I'm gonna try and stop.
There we go. Let's try and see what just happened. Hmm. Yeah, okay. I was in presentation mode and dropped over. So hopefully everyone can now see that, and I apologize for the mishap there. But basically, back in the United States, and grateful to be back on the 4th of July, for many that don't understand what this day is all about, Independence Day and the Declaration of Independence that actually preceded the Constitution was a big part of it. And that Declaration of Independence, which is recognized as Independence Day for the 4th of July, is a very important document, as well as the Constitution. But for many folks that don't understand, that Declaration of Independence started the actual first Constitution that was ever created. There were other declarations that were created, but the Constitution of America was actually the first that nations actually adopted. And now we've got, 150 plus countries or nations that have actually adopted their own version of their own constitution. And some of them, for instance, one of the most recent ones is South Africa, as well as New Zealand and other countries like that. But they basically have modeled it after the United States of America. Some people would say, does the United States have a future? Will the United States stay united? And a lot of folks look at what's going on within, and some folks inside the U.S. and outside the U.S. And it's really been an eye opener for me to be able to get outside the U.S. and start digging into other countries and seeing what issues they experience and what things they don't experience, what problems they don't have, what things are happening based upon self-inflicted. I wouldn't say self-inflicted um, destruction by the country, but by not doing anything, by just sitting by. And we all, for instance, I'm actually going to drop out of this real fast. If you have not watched this video here, where did it go? If you haven't watched Plandemic, I urge you to do so, because I've worked with Mickey. I don't, for those that are not aware, last year almost every single month we would go to a different state in the United States. And there was a common group of about a dozen folks, and Mickey was one of them. And I think he's done an amazing job to articulate really what is happening. So if you have not watched this documentary series, 1, 2, 3, this third one really does a very good job of just simply summarizing what is happening. And I don't want to, my job is not to relay the details around what's truth or what's not truth. Individuals will figure that out by discerning on their own. But what we're focused on here with the digital world and with the different technologies within the Clear companies is all about decentralization. Decentralization for those that want it now, as well as for future generations. But this is a really good, if you're still coming up to speed and some of the concepts are maybe foreign to you, or it may just sound like it's just straight up conspiracy theory, just gather data, get your own set of information, get on your own knees and try and understand what's truth from error. And hopefully, that information is provided for you. But one of the questions that have come up is, will the United States stay in the current form that it's in? And primarily because you get such a segregation, and that video that I just talked about, Plandemic 3, does a really good job of talking about a divide. And it's not just in the United States of America. This is globally. I mean, when I travel to some of these countries, one thing that's common is vaccination. Are you vaccinated? Some countries don't even care. They don't even ask about it. It's not even a reality today. But when I ask around and say, did you get vaccinated? It's crazy to see how far and wide it has gone. And on one hand, it's sad. On the other hand, It's reality. And we have to do the best that we can with the current reality that we get the opportunity to live in. And I still think this dispensation is an amazing dispensation, one that we should all be grateful to be a part of, not that we should be scared of. But the reality today faces the United States of America on this July 4th, Independence Day of 2023, that there is a real conflict. And it primarily around what the world would call, or at least in the US, red and blue states. And this is one map and one perspective, but ultimately data in the right form. And that's why decentralization is such an important thing, because decentralized data can provide a level of accuracy that humanity has never seen before, whether that's in health records, whether that's in land management, whether that's in truth, statistical data, especially around voting. So hopefully some of these systems that we're talking about become realized, and hopefully it's not too far away. I know we're already coming into the elections of 2024, and decentralized systems and voting is not even on the horizon from what I'm seeing, primarily because a lot of these folks that we went and did this America event, they're not focusing specifically on technology to enable, or through innovation to enable, transparency around voting. They're talking about paper ballots, but we won't get into voting and all that stuff. All I'm saying is there's a natural conflict within the United States of America on many levels. And I think ultimately it's just good versus bad, or good light versus darkness, and good versus evil. Those are the real drivers that I personally see that is the conflict. Do we need to focus on it? No. Do we need to worry about, internal warring? Those things have happened. But do we need to worry ourselves about it? No. I believe in our own spheres, and now more than ever. And what I mean by that is it's not just the country that's under attack. Families are under attack. Individuals are under attack. And we're seeing it within the minds and within the information that is being garnished around the world. And a large portion, and I mentioned this before the call, I personally am not really plugged into what's going on in America, primarily because I don't watch news. I try to check out of whether it's media news or whether it's even social media news. But oh boy. Yeah, it looks like we're still good, but let's try and refresh here. So basically, what I'm running through is there a deeper issue that could happen in the short term internally to the United States? And I'll just throw that out there. Is that our focus? It's not our battle to fight, so to speak. But what I can tell you is announcing as of today. So today again is July 4th, 2023. There is a promo of 15% off of the Freedom phone. So the promo is Freedom 23, and folks that are tied into Clear United can tie into these as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. But basically, I'd like to announce today, July 4th, there is a 15% promo for anyone that wants to check out at freedomphone.com. You basically just plug in Freedom 23 and you can grab a Freedom phone for that. This is the first discount code that we've had all year, and it will go through the end of this week. So please don't delay on that. And there is good inventory on it and quantities that are available. So with that being said, I'll jump into a little bit about some of the things that transpired this recently. One of them was and this is a governance, the future of money and finance and law, as it relates primarily to decentralization. This is you'll see in the bottom right over here. I don't know if you can see it, and I'll try and present it again. But you can see in the bottom right, this is a Declaration of Unity. And just like the Declaration of Independence on this July 4th, I believe that this Declaration of Unity is just as important as the Declaration of Independence. You'll see this in front of is literally right in the belly of where laws are being created, or the opposite. But this is in Washington, D.C. This is with parties from almost every agency that you can imagine, from the Security and Exchange Commission to certain legal bodies to Internal Revenue Service, different organizations that have or will have a serious um, involvement in some of the things that will transpire in the future. So we were given a solid opportunity. This is a URL. If you want, you know what, I'll drop back out of that. I'll drop this. So it starts at 9 minutes, and let me see if I can get this into folks. It starts at 9 minutes and 15 seconds that you can start actually running through it. But at the beginning, he explains what it is. But after the beginning, I jumped to about 9:15, unless you want a history lesson by another gentleman that's there. So, but this was a really important event, and one that we're all grateful to be able to be a part of. We really go through kind of the history in different countries as it relates to learning from the past, so that we can at least gain an understanding of the future. So it also talks about digital assets, and it's a real world example of how they can actually function. So again, I dropped the link in a couple different places. If you're able to view that, let's see if I can put it over here as well. Yeah. And it looks like the last link that went in was actually to the video. So I'm going to try and drop this in here. Let's see if I can grab this again. So again, just start at 9:15 if you can. If for those that want to watch it, if not, no worries. But this will at least gives you an understanding. There's no Q&A session to it, but it is super duper good content. So I won't be specific on some of the countries that we've been working with, but I will give you an understanding that the levels that we're working at are very key. And we've had some very strategic meetings and turning on lights within different countries. This is particularly this last week. So some of the advancements are primarily around reserves and countries actually accepting not just fiat dollars and digital dollars, but the combination of the two as it relates to real assets. So for those of you that are aware, in the financial world, money is not just created, it's actually borrowed. And once it's borrowed, then it can actually be disseminated. So if someone wants to purchase a home, if they can financially validate that they're worthy of credit, they can get a credit card, or they can get a credit line, or they can get a home equity line, or they can get a mortgage. Let's use a mortgage as an example. When a construction company or whoever you're buying the home from gets paid, they're getting paid for basically just created by the bank for and behalf of whoever's borrowing it. And it's called fractional based lending. It's, you know, usually it used to be 9-to-1. Now it's more like 10, 11, 12 plus to 1. So if there's $1 on deposit, they can loan out $10. And that's basically how the financial systems have worked historically. When we bumped into a real wall in 2008, that they were starting to see some honesty and transparency within those realms. And the reality is today it's much, much worse. If we think that 2008 was a disaster and had massive corrections, today, I don't even think we're being honest with the numbers, but every single day, the amount of money that is burnt. And a lot of the topics that we went through over the 2 or 3 day period of this particular event was on that. Now, some of the nice things around some of these other countries is they have clean slates. Yeah, so it's really, actually, I see a couple hands up. If you would like, yeah, if you'd like, feel free to. We're straight up right now, so feel free to ask questions if anyone has them. Since we don't have moderators on, I'll drop into some of the chat logs myself. But any questions or thoughts, feel free to throw them out. Otherwise, I'll just continue to keep going. We've got a question here. Why are you focused on working with governments, and why in the Pacific? On many hands, these different organizations or governments or nations, some that are sovereign, some that are commonwealth, some that are independent or not, they have a clean slate, whereas the United States of America and many big countries, there's so many moving parts. For instance, why is it that every candidate, whether on the right or the left, that's running for president says, when I get in, I'm going to audit the Federal Reserve. And then when they get in, including Trump and many others, when they get in, they don't audit the Federal Reserve. It's not just because the numbers are so big and different and all over the place, and there's so many moving parts. It's because when we go back in history, for instance, a printing press and many printing presses were given from the United States to Taiwan when the leadership in Taiwan created Taiwan and left China. Why? Because in the Pacific, that large body of water, I think it's 650 million. No, maybe it's 165 million square miles or kilometers. I shouldn't even go through the numbers because I don't know for sure. But it's a very large portion, a large body of water that basically separates two big parts of the world. I'm not talking Atlantic or Pacific, but within the Pacific, there are a lot of different countries that are independent, or maybe they've been taken over, whether it's Spain or France or Europe, but they've also, and I'd say half of them or more, within the last 50 years have actually said goodbye. Goodbye to the Spaniards, goodbye to the French, goodbye to the Europeans. We want our country back. We want to be able to run and manage our own world independently. So one, they're small. Let's see, why are we working with governments? They're sovereign in some cases, like Tonga and Samoa, and many of them are sovereign. They can make decisions quickly. And not only that, they'll do what's right for their people. Most of them are not as corrupt as other countries. Why the Pacific? The Pacific is a very key part of the world. Primarily, maybe you haven't heard the phrase, the last will be the first and the first will be the last. The people in the Pacific, their hearts haven't been as tainted as the rest of the world, whether that's with greed or with pride or with ego or just with material things of the world. And some folks, like I talked to a guy 2 weeks ago that's down there that's very connected. He says that the people in the Pacific are all backwards because they don't care about the same things that bigger countries do. They say that the savings rate is not equal to others. They say that, and in my opinion, I actually believe the opposite. I believe that these what the world would call undeveloped countries are actually very intentional with staying undeveloped. The tribes, the villages, the communities, the decentralized ecosystems that they live within are intentionally separated by design. And I believe in many cases they're even happier than other parts of the world. I would say if you looked at it from a SWOT analysis or a potential around what could go wrong, think about this. Think about supply chain and think about population density. What city do you live in? Does the city that you live in have so many people that if you needed to, even if your city was given a whole year, could that city physically grow and transport, whether it's having sunlight, seeds, water, temperatures, could you actually grow enough food to sustain life for the population density that your current city has? And if the question is no, well, then you got to worry about supply chain. So you got to worry about shipping. And we could argue that, now with trains and a lot that's happening within transportation. For instance, inside of this video, they talk a lot about what's happened up in Canada with the truckers and how, just shutting down bank accounts. And not only that, but some of the things they did was even deeper than that. But what I'm trying to articulate is being independent and decentralized provides an ability to make true and correct decisions that are for the betterment of the whole. So, for instance, I'll pull up Tuvalu. Tuvalu is the first digital nation to actually stand up. And they are in the Pacific, and they're one of the smaller countries in the Pacific, but they're actually one of the first countries that is threatened by climate change and water levels rising that would actually make their country disappear. When we say water level rising, go back to that same thought around population density and growing food. When waters come up, even if it's in a storm, salt water hits crops or food and they die. Crops or food, majority of the time, need fresh water to stay alive. And when they don't hit it, they literally, even one exposure to some salt water, the plants die. I'm not saying they can't come back, but what I'm driving at is this country is one of the first countries that is massively being threatened. Tuvalu is massively being threatened. And so they've done the right things for, and usually when there's an issue, there's a sense of urgency. Leadership will actually start standing up. And I can tell you the leadership within Tuvalu are standing up for the right reasons. Is it popular? No. Are these individuals scrutinized? Like I've actually never really dealt in politics, and I hope I don't have to, and I don't want to, but they literally are having to deal with things that are not normal. And at least from what I've seen, it takes 3-4 times the amount of effort to get simple things done. But what you'll see within this country is a driver's license that can be decentralized and digital, the ability to get married online, the ability, and this is forward looking with some of the registrations. For instance, there's a massive ship registry worldwide with Tuvalu. That is still independent. You'll see some digital registrations in the future, but it's not today as it relates to automation and assets and organizations. But if you want to create a digital business or digital assets, or even a digital payments eventually, and digital land management, disputes, so you'll see a lot of different things that are actually transpiring that will come within these different digital nations. So I'll stop blabbing there. Hopefully I've answered the question, which was, why are you focused on working with governments and why in the Pacific? So the one thing I left out of that was, in island nations, they're usually smaller. Their quantity, the size of them are smaller. For instance, Tuvalu is about 11,000 people. Fiji is one of the bigger countries, and it's about 924,000 as of last year's census data. So we're just under 1 million there. And majority of the other countries are all in between those two numbers. There's a couple like Papua New Guinea and some others that are many, many millions. But for the large portion of it, the majority range between the size of Tuvalu all the way up to the size of Fiji. So it's easier to implement. Like literally, you can start getting adoption and implementation. And what you need is small little use cases that can be pilots within these countries that can start adopting it. And then you start converting over these pilots into production ecosystems. And then the countries can start sharing or peering with other countries. For instance, let's say Vanuatu and Tuvalu and Fiji. What if they wanted to sell, for instance, I didn't even know this, but kava isn't really well grown inside of Fiji, but it's used a lot in Fiji. Where do they get it from? They get it from Vanuatu and other places. For instance, Tuvalu doesn't grow much of that at all, if anything. So if Vanuatu is growing kava and sells it to Fiji, how do they pay for it? And could it be done digitally? Or if, and one of the good use cases that we're exploring is, let's say that a boat is fishing in the Tuvaluan waters from South Korea. Can that boat's transponder number automatically be tied with a payment transaction, so in real time you can see if it was actually paid? So if a GPS shows that boat in certain waters, you can see if a payment was also done. But everything has to go digital for these things to be able to be measured and deployed. So those are just some examples of why the Pacific and why different governments, and the direct answer is size. They're early adopters that can actually roll this out. I would also argue the same thing is happening. Why is Australia and Canada and New Zealand some of the first parts of the world that you're seeing some of these things locked down on hard? You're seeing things in Australia and New Zealand that you didn't see in other parts of the world, and then you see it rolled out in Canada. Well, one, they're Commonwealth countries, but two, whenever, and if you back up, for instance, we bought a company in 2007 and they were launching a new innovative product, and they were starting with Australia, and I couldn't understand why. So I went down to Australia to visit and understand, and lo and behold, the answer was the size, population, and the ecosystems is a simple proof point. If you can roll it out, a product in Australia, you can, majority of the time, you can roll it out worldwide. And that's really what's happening. You're seeing borders getting locked down, policies getting locked down. You're seeing other parts of the world come into these different, for instance, the United Nations was inside of Australia when things were really sideways and people were like, I don't want to get vaccinated. I don't want to be locked down in my home. Or when people were protesting, namely Billy over in New Zealand, he saw kids that were committing suicide because they were just home too long. They literally just, it wasn't a vaccination topic. It was straight isolation. And these kids would just take their lives. And he says, enough is enough. And he stood up, and many others stood up with him, and they put him in jail. This is a man that served his country from the military, from police, and even ran for prime minister. And, you know, I won't talk about elections and all that other stuff, but all I'm saying is these different countries are test beds for the whole world. But when we start rolling out systems that can actually be impacted in real time, we're not going to be able to do it in these big countries. We've got to start small. We've got to start and prove it and be able to get out there. So hopefully I've answered that question. We'll go ahead and open it up for next question or thought or feedback. Let's see if I've got, I still don't have admins on. I'll go ahead and see if I can find one to read. You can input them, you can type them, or you can verbally ask them on the different meeting sites. Here's one. Okay, what's this one saying? What's the difference between the digital world and digital nations? The digital world. So what we're this is what I'm got up here is a digital nation. It's a country that says they actually have, they've got their own governance, they've got their own team members. You know, they've got different individuals that basically work within different ministries. They've got their own governance structure. They've got their own councils. They've got their own services. So nations, digital nations, are countries that have self-selected to actually use a form of decentralization, either in part or in whole. It may be just one or two services. For instance, you know, the digital world has a lot more services than this, but these services are initial services. And I actually think there's even a smaller amount of these. I don't even think they're not rolling out 2 or 3 of these right now. But so the answer to the question is the digital world, this site here, is set of here's an example of lots of services. It's a set of technology that is decentralized, that has infrastructure that developers can actually develop, and partners can actually offer services. So certain service providers can come in and basically offer services to these digital nations. And digital nations are countries that actually say they want to adopt standards. I'll give you an example. In the United States of America, there's a thing called UCC, a Universal I think it's Commerce Code, but I think I might be wrong. But the UCC is a form of policy, really simple. It's not long. It's only a page or two, but it took about 40 years for almost all, and they still all haven't adopted it. But every state, by the way, in the United States, the authority is actually given to the counties for like land management, identity management, or like, some would say that the actual county doesn't do identity, but they do voting and things like that. But the state would do it. So, for instance, if a state has the ability to offer a certain type of service, how does that get offered within really the separation between a nation and services versus a county or province or a state? So the digital world is a framework that different states or counties or provinces could actually adopt. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a nation. It could be a county. A county could say, you know what, or a state could say, for instance, why is it that a large portion of businesses that want to raise money in the United States or even outside the United States incorporate within Delaware? It's primarily because the governing law that has been adopted within Delaware is pro for the shareholder. Some other states do it pro for maybe disclosure laws. But the point that I'm driving at is 90% of all of the states in the United States have adopted a UCC law, which took over 40 years to actually get the adoption. The digital world is an example of code or innovation where technology can actually be stood up, and then different cultures, tongue, people, nations, kindred, however you want to dice it, they can choose to adopt this technology. So it's not just a digital world or digital nations. You can actually have a digital state. A state could say, hey, we want to adopt this internally. It would be my prayer and wish that Utah would actually lead in these types of discussions. Over the last 3 years, I've approached them, and it's, even though I was born here, spent almost 30 years building businesses here, it is like pulling teeth just to be able to get them to listen to what decentralization could do for humanity. And the sad thing is Utah is actually leading the way in centralized systems, which tears me up, but that's the reality that we're currently facing. Will that change? Hopefully. But hopefully I've answered your question. The digital world is a framework of technology that can offer services that countries like this country or nation can actually adopt. And furthermore, it's not just a country or a province. It could also be a state. It could also be a county. So like when we look at this chart here and we look at these different states and we say, hey, if you really dig into this map, it's actually divided up by county. What's crazy is because some of these are like massively red and throughout the state, but because of electoral voting and other messes, the state gets switched over. But I won't get into that. So hopefully I answered that question. Any other thoughts, questions? Again, feel free to text them, or feel free to just raise your hand or just interrupt.
Michael, I put a question in the ripple effect chat.
Okay. Let's see if I can find it. And again, it's a holiday here, so I'm grateful for those that do help. But have you heard about the ruling? Let's see. I don't know if this is yours. Have you heard about the ruling with the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit? The judge has ordered that the U.S. government to cease its communications with social media companies. Oh, wouldn't that be wonderful? The judge may not be able to enforce this. So could decentralization prevent government censorship? I wasn't familiar with that. Maybe whoever typed in UCC. So yeah, it was Commercial Code. So would I say Commerce Code? So I'm not familiar with this. Can you provide some light on this?
It just happened today. I'll see if I can find the link.
Okay. Yeah, this is new news to me. I did have some interesting news that came through one of the countries that we're working with at some very high levels that talked about Biden and him possibly not being alive. But I think we've heard that over and over and over. But this one came through as though it was actually a recent thing, and media is just trying to figure out how to spin it correctly. And so, but that's a different topic. But here we are on July 4th, and it actually came in on July 3rd. Actually, it was their 4th, but if you do get a link, feel free to go ahead and provide more context there, because that's massively important. The Clear community is a binary replacement for Facebook, but it will not scale to the same levels that Facebook does under its current resources, and I would say even under its current technology load. So we're not going to be able to support the separation of that, primarily because you've got to get decentralized ID adopted to masses. And then, for instance, if an organization like Twitter were to say decentralized IDs could actually be implemented within their ecosystem, now you can start getting not just freedom of speech, but you can start getting a separation from church and state, and from perspectives just like what these guys are talking about. And when you really, there's a bunch of interviews that I did with Brittany Kaiser, who was the whistleblower with Cambridge Analytica. She basically talked about how Biden, or excuse me, it wasn't Biden, it was Obama and Trump. She personally worked on the Trump and Obama campaigns and helped them to get elected. And then some other countries. If you haven't, she's got there's a documentary that was done by Netflix just after Social Dilemma. The same team that did Social Dilemma did a documentary on her. I forget what it's called, but they showed how social media was able to influence elections. And just all you're doing is you're getting a marketing company that says, hey, we're going to go and figure out how to market to this population a certain message. And what they, in this particular ecosystem within this documentary, what they talk about is how this media company basically said, hey, it's not a matter of voting for option A or option B, but the campaign is don't vote. It's cool not to vote. If you're a youth, don't vote. It doesn't matter. Your vote won't count. Because they knew that certain conservative parties or religions, namely, I want to say it was a large Indian population, whether it was Hindu or Muslim or Buddhist, but there's a large family depth and cultural depth that would have the parents telling, or at least the past generation, maybe it was grandparents, telling the youth to go and vote. And so by them throwing out a message, now think about this. The marketing message was don't vote. That's the message. So the folks that didn't vote, the youth or the younger generation, didn't counterbalance those that actually came in and did, therefore they won. So it's using simple strategies like that that basically, I think, directly ties to what this comment that we're seeing. So see, Missouri versus Biden. So it was a state of Missouri that actually sued Biden directly as an individual.
Well, it's the state AG that's suing Biden's administration.
Okay, so it's the attorney general within the state that's going after,
right? And
the Biden
the former attorney general before the election of 22 started the case, and he was elected as senator. So the new AG is continuing the lawsuit.
That's awesome. Hats off to some of these attorney generals that are standing up and doing the right things, because a lot of this stuff has to actually run a legal process. The issue is, can we do it fast enough? Like, I'm on some channels within the military ecosystem that is just similar type thing. They're legally pursuing some of the Biden administration's laws, or whatever you want to call them. I won't even call them laws because they're not. But they're legally going about the corrective way to get it fixed The real question is, can they do it fast enough? And has the damage that's already been caused so deep that we won't be able to make a difference? But again, if you get any more details on that, you're welcome to throw that in. So any more questions or thoughts? We do have a couple more minutes.
Michael, James here.
Hi, bud.
How are you? You all good?
Good. Life is good. Tired. I haven't slept for a day or so, but it's good to be back in America.
No, fair enough. So yeah, basically, I always enjoy hearing about all the stuff that's going on and the future developments in particular. But obviously, I always look at it from like, how can we grow this? How can we show it to other people? Point of view as well. And the trouble with the Freedom Phone offer that you put, the Freedom 23 referral code with the 15% off, there's a couple of things there. One, a lot of people haven't actually got a Freedom Phone, and they're obviously slightly different to the Clear Phone. And secondly, you don't earn any rewards for that, so there's not really any incentive for people to push that product to other people, not financially anyway. So is that really going to be of much benefit? I actually always dissuade people from buying a Freedom Phone if they don't have the budget, and I ask them to save up for the 620s and stuff that are left at the moment, or try and go on the obviously the pre-release products. But I think that if we're going to do a referral code, there's so many different options we could do. A discount code. There's so many different options we could do. Like, for example, to boost sales ahead of the 423 and the 623, but particularly the 423, we could do something like offer 20% off until it hits target, until it hits $500,000 worth of sales, which is the next 220, 230 phones or so. Things like that. There's so many different options. I just think that there's better things that we could be focusing on to try and drive new traffic. People don't want a cheap phone, like even though some people want a Freedom Phone because it's $499, it's not going to satisfy the main majority of people, because the cameras aren't going to be good enough, or it's not going to be this, or it's not going to be that. And also, there is no incentive for people to put from a rewards point about what are we really focusing here on as affiliates.
So all of your comments make a ton of sense to me. And what I would propose is we work together to launch similar Clearphone based offerings, and we just do it in short order. So the same code will also work within the Clear United ecosystem. Now it drops down the dollar amount for the 620, but there's still rewards that can be paid on it. So it's still across the board on the 620 as well. We just need to do something bigger, and that's really what we're planning. Is a 15% sale is important, but ultimately I'm right there with you that these, and the value point for this phone is a solid value point. It's usually used as a secondary phone, and primarily around folks that want to get in and understand decentralization. But for the mainstream to say the camera, the screen, the memory, and the battery are all up there with the latest and greatest, I would agree with you that the battery is pretty solid, but the screen,
the battery's great. There's lots of real positive points, but as I say,
it's just not there.
You said with the 423 and the 623, they're going to have stabilizers with the camera, which will make a big difference to video. Yeah. I think the photos are great. Sometimes in the dark, that it doesn't quite capture things as brilliantly, but I think the camera is pretty good on the 620. No qualms about it, really. Just the videos wouldn't be such good quality, but it's just more. I really want to focus on growing this, because the more phones we sell, the more people will get on the ripple effect. The more people we touch with in various different ways to get people on board with decentralization and the Clear project overall. So, as much as obviously it's great that we're doing all this other stuff, and that governments of small countries and stuff are getting on board from the Pacific Islands to try and grow this within some significant nations, we've got to really drive an incentive that makes it worthwhile for pace. you know what I mean? Like, to really get some speed behind it, because if we don't, it just kind of, it's a slow chug, and it's just like, sell a few phones here and there, but it's not really touching the sides. And I just want to get this out to as many people as possible, to impact as many people as possible. And as soon as people start really enjoying using their Clear phone, particularly when the new models come out, we can drive a massive amount of excitement behind that when they haven't actually come out yet in the next few months.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I want to focus on, really. Like, if you need a phone right now because you've smashed your screen on your old Samsung or iPhone, great, we can get you a 620 or a 620X. But really, we should be able to drive a massive amount of excitement behind the new models that are going to have stabilizers. They're going to be better than the last ones. And, Clear as a company have learned loads of lessons over the last few years, and everything's better. So it's that's kind of where I'm coming from and what I want to try and do. But there has to be an incentive for people to get in early. So it's like, as I said, 20% off until we hit target. Then we know the phones are being made. And then that might disappoint some of the people that have already bought them, but maybe we could offer them some kind of other discount or whatever for the people that have already bought them.
I think your recommendation is spot on, and I think we need to get it done now. I think we need to push through it. So what I would propose is, and I know I don't have support stuff on right that I'm seeing, but I'll take a task to get guidance and direction on getting action completed this week. And so that by the time we have our next ripple effect next week, we can announce it, because you're spot on.
Yeah. Before we do announce stuff, and I'm not saying that I'm the be all and end all, but obviously, I've helped and supported along this whole journey for the last over 2.5 years now, and I do an awful lot for my team, and I understand the issues that people sometimes face, but I also understand the positive aspects of it all as well, and just from a basic user point of view more than anything else. But I also understand what's going to probably drive certain behaviors in people to act now and actually buy a phone, or put their money where their mouth is and buy on the pre-release ASAP. I'm not saying it's going to work with everybody, because loads of people are moaning money's tight at the moment because of all this man-made inflation crap. But the fact is that I know that with something to hang our hat on, I can help drive that within the team. And also, if possible, if I could have access to all the people that have ever signed up in my team, whether, in a decentralized way where I don't actually have their specific email address or telephone number, but I'm able to send out mass marketing to the people that signed up within my organization and offer my help, or even if it's amongst anybody that's ever considered a Clear phone and, they haven't signed up with anybody yet, but they're on a mailing list or something. As long as I don't have their personal data and I can market to them and be their point of contact, I would love to be able to do that to help with the project.
The best we can do there is folks within your circle that have opted in to getting communication from folks in their circle, because we actually enabled that probably a year, maybe a year and a half ago. So we can possibly get what you're talking about, but it's got to be based upon the individuals opting into it. So, but let's
were they, when people have signed up, were they automatically opted in?
No. They actually have to go through a process to say, I want more communication, because we're as private. I mean, we just don't do what you're asking. We just don't do. But if there is an option where they can actually physically go figure out what URL, asks them a question, they check a box, and then they get more information. We get a lot of people that say, this is the best thing we've ever heard of, but why have we not heard of this? It's like, tell us, keep us in the loop. And so we enabled that a while ago. But
well, I've got a friend who's very into a health and wellness company called ASEA, ASEA, and they're based in Utah. Mm-hmm. They also are the big sponsors for Operation Underground Railroad, which is obviously a charity that Clear supports as well.
Love those guys,
He wants to try and sort out a link between the bosses there and you. I'd love to talk to you about that, because they've obviously got a very awake group of people that are obviously involved in health and wellness and the stuff they're doing around that.
We would be honored to work with them. I think that's a really good firm.
Well, they're based out of Utah as well, Michael. So it's
absolutely. Just set that up and let's go from there. By the way, I did follow up on some requests, particularly with Jimmy Levy, and let's also have some conversation on that. One other thing I want to mention while I'm thinking about it is there's a new news system that is updated. Let me see if I can. So if you go to Clear, well, I won't even go there right now. I'll announce it next week with the right stuff, but we've actually made some technology advancements there. So let me, I know we're running out of time. I want to make sure that any questions that may be outstanding get answered. So if there's any other questions or thoughts, check some of these. Oh, we got a bunch of stuff here. Okay, so 2 other questions. What do the Clear companies do? The simplest answer to what do the Clear companies do is the Clear companies focus on decentralization. Here, I'll pull up a website and kind of walk you through it. So clear.co.com. So all the Clear companies focus on decentralization, but it may be in a different way. So Clear Foundation is focused on kind of enabling software development for decentralization. Clear Center is all about decentralized storage and an operating system called ClearOS Server that connects up the decentralized storage. Clear Cellular is focused on really a decentralized phone and a decentralized operating system called ClearOS Mobile that connects into that storage. And then Clear United is all about telling the world and marketing and driving awareness. And then the software side of it, there's some future things, but it's basically everything you see within the Clear companies are all focused around software and innovation that's focused around decentralization. So simplest answer, it's real. Clear helps decentralize systems that free individuals and businesses or builds a better future. So I kind of gave a clunky answer, but hopefully to that's a very simple question, but it's a good question. Another one, why are you, I don't understand what that is. So basically he's asking, or she, why am I individually working with countries? It's a good way. And how do I do it? Okay, so here's this might help explain it. So Clear United is a go-to-market strategy to tell the world through people telling people. And a portion of that revenue goes to people instead of discounting products or to partners or to ads or to advertising, kind of like what James was just talking about. You know, he wants to build a business, build income, tell people about it, and that's what Clear United's all about. I won't focus on partners, but the question was really around why am I personally, because I know this has shifted this last year, but since the beginning of the year, I've focused directly with different governments. So for the last almost, 7 months into the year, probably 5.5 months, I've been in different countries, working with different countries, or primarily here, I'll pull this up. So these are the different countries. So they're primarily in the Pacific. There is some things that are connecting other parts of the world. But the important part of this is, like James was talking about, people telling people is one way to get adoption. Countries signing up and saying, hey, welcome visitor, download this app to be able to operate within this country. Like right when you get to the airport, it's like download this app, turn in currencies, buy a coconut on the side of the road, and you got superannuation funds and taxation and everybody that basically gets paid all in the same ecosystem. But it's a way to be able to drive digitalization as the digital systems are being rolled out. When I say digital systems, I'm talking about central bank digital currencies are all run on digital systems. The goal is to make it so that the central bank side of it can actually have the option or alternative to be a decentralized bank. So, for instance, some of these photos that I just went through here, I won't be specific, but these individuals are trying to find a better way for their citizens in the future, whether that's saving money today. For instance, this particular country spends about $3.3 million every year just in printing currency and then putting it into ATMs. So in the digital ecosystem, that basically is no longer needed. Would they keep the current circulation and, cash-based societies? For instance, when we were in Vanuatu, we went through 2 cyclones, and the second cyclone took down power infrastructure for a good 80% of some of the main islands for weeks. And in a cash-based society, and ATM's not working, people can't buy, even though they may have money, they can't get access to it. So it's a perfect example of why digital currencies are the future. The real issue is you don't want central banks to own the digital assets as well as the encryption keys. The goal is to be able to get it to the individual. There's another slide over here that talks a lot about, is this it? Oh, let's see. So this is a really good slide that talks about, and some of you have seen it before, but you can see this in different parts. So I guess the answer to the question is it's important to help provide an opportunity for nations to be able to know that there's an alternative path forward. I don't know. So what was the other part of that question? How do I penetrate in? So the question is all around how are we going about it in a weird way. But maybe I'm not reading this right, but I think they're asking how do we actually get into each country. Usually you don't go to a country unless there's a relationship that can be engaged. And what I mean by that is there is someone on the ground that understands the mission for the digital world. They have some type of connection, but they're local. So they understand the global issues, and they basically have connections into local government locally. And they're going to be able to be the ones that actually will grab that baton and continue to carry it, because the goal is to enable these countries to do it on their own, and then we get out of their way. For instance, with Tuvalu, we basically stand these different services up, and then you let these different parts of the world go and govern themselves. So, they build their own Tuvalu Life app, they build their own Tuvalu payment system. Once they start actually doing it, it's going to be very valuable for these different parts of the world. So the answer to the question is we don't go into every country. If, for instance, we'll do when we look at, let's go back over to here. When we look at the different nations, we've met with 16 different countries. They actually all flew in to meet with us. And then the ones that actually want to go a level deeper, or there's some type of compelling relationship or compelling reason, those are the ones that we specifically travel to. So, for instance, Tuvalu, Vanuatu, Fiji, these are all countries that we've actually physically have a presence within, and we're trying to teach them how to actually bring up their own systems and their own governance, because they have to create their own laws. They have to modify their own laws. They have to have cabinet that are created and parliament that actually agrees. Or if some of these countries, they don't work off of that centralized system. But for instance, one of the next countries we're meeting with, their sovereign, and what would be the equivalent of the prime minister is actually a female. And they're actually asking us to come out. They saw what Tuvalu's doing, and they were like, will you come out and will you explain this to us and show us the importance of this? And so I hope that answers that question. Any other questions or thoughts, feedback?
Michael, just on that front, from a marketing point of view, the Tuvalu, I think it's called Prime Minister, I think, rather than President. Yeah. The video of him where he's half in the water and talking about rising sea levels and stuff like that, one you showed us last week or the week before.
Yep.
that's actually gone quite viral on Instagram. I saw it and it got a lot of likes and views and stuff like that. And some of my friends had shared it on Instagram that haven't got a clear phone, for example. Now, the only thing that I would say is that we all know that the people that generally have, I just try and think of the audience, the people that have clear phones don't tend to believe in climate change. So therefore, anybody starts speaking about rising sea levels, automatically they're like, it gets their back up, for example.
This is the reason why. We all know that there's a game being played between good versus evil. And the people,
I'm going to go across you. You're going to what I was going to say just quickly, so before you tell us if that's okay.
Go ahead.
I believe that he's worried about it because he knows that this is man-made and they're trying to wipe them out.
It goes a level deeper. So let's back up and let's just call this what it is. This is an attack versus good versus evil, and it's going at 3 different levels. One is the individual, the identity, the gender. We're stripping. I won't even get into all the details there, but the individual is being under attack, the family is being attacked, and the earth is being attacked. And what they're doing is they're using an excuse to say everyone needs a carbon credit footprint and a score to be able to be involved in the future, so to speak, in the future. Boy, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So they're actually going to, in the future, they're going to position this new score based around climate change. Now, I personally believe that climate change, whatever it is actually a natural thing. Our Earth.
I completely agree with you.
I mean, it's just something that's, apologize about the noise, but it's something that is a natural thing that our amazing Earth just automatically does. Has humanity tried to mess with, with DARPA and other things to actually modify? Yeah, sure. But, am I massively worried about climate and rising water? No, it's just reality. This that we get to live on. For instance, where I'm sitting right now, even though I'm about 8,000 feet, 6,000 to 8,000 feet, and these mountains behind me go up to 11, almost 12,000 feet, this was all underwater. These mountains were created by ice, not by erosion from water running through it. So we have no idea around when we talk about weather and climate change. It's just a big game. But they're using for instance, I actually went to Davos and the World Economic Forum, and I sat in front of John Kerry, and I told him face to face, voice to voice, man to man, you're wrong. It's not about climate change. It's not about heat. And if you really want energy to people, there are natural technologies today. That do not operate at any kind of heat level that can pop out sustainable, unlimited power it's just a gift here. Ambient power that's perpetual, circular. I mean, it's just, and I even wrote a little article on that. But the point being is, this is all just a game. But the point of climate change game will actually be a score that people have that they're going to be paid by or not paid by. And so either the folks that you're talking about, either they're going to get on board with this or they're not. And the key is, if they're not, we got to have a real alternative that truly can actually build a reputation score that competes with that centralized climate control credit carbon garbage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. All I'm doing is that, like, when I watch the video, I just know that what some people within this sphere who have similar thoughts on lots of things, but maybe not everything, to me, would say. But I just think that when I see something like that, and this is a friend who isn't a conspiracy theorist or isn't, in inverted commas, you know what I mean, isn't like, in off the deep end on lots of topics. She just works on a cruise ship. I used to network with her in Birmingham City Centre, travels the world now, and she shared the video, and it's had loads of shares, loads of likes, this video, loads. And that's where we've got to be smart and piggyback off the back of that to use it to Clear's advantage to spread our message.
Yeah, you're right. There's 2 different videos that this gentleman did. His name is Honorable Simon Kofi, and I believe that he should be the next minister or the next prime minister. Currently, he's over foreign affairs, communication, and one other thing that I forget. But he is on the same perspective. There's three videos that he's done that are viral. The first one that you're talking about, it was where he's basically standing in water as they pan out. It's the same gentleman here, right? So as they pan out, they're basically going through and he's standing in water. This one, he's actually digitized. So this is the following year. This is this last year. I want to say it was October, November this last year. And as he pans out, he's basically digitally mapped out Tuvalu. And him and I personally went to the little island that they mapped out, which was pretty isolated earlier this year. But and he's of the same osmosis, the same thought process. If you really read between the lines of his words, he sees it. He sees it for what it is. And he sees all of it. These individuals are very intelligent and very smart, but they also understand that you have to be politically correct and then roll things out at the right time and the right way. And the intentions in the heart are what's right about these individuals. And that's why, for me, I would dedicate time and energy to go out and help them to be able to stand up their digital nation and to offer these services. And the other thing that also needs to be mentioned is people don't have to get a clear phone. As much as we don't want to hear that on this call, the goal is to get it so that everyone in the world can actually be a part of decentralization. It's the clear phones are the first way to be able to get engaged into it. And even the Freedom Phone, I mean, the Freedom Phone won't run Google, but it is a secure phone. It's a very secure phone. When we go through this, what is it, Freedom?
That's the thing, Michael. I agree with everything that you're saying. And I know not everybody has to get a clear phone. I'm not expecting that either, but I hate to use it like this. It's the gateway drug to decentralization.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the way to get people thinking about it, using it, and trying to use it to the maximum capabilities on a day-to-day basis, and understanding the benefits of that. And that's why it's so powerful. But this is what annoys me about this website is we've never had the Armor phone ever available, ever. We need to rip that off the website and just get rid of it because it confuses people.
No,
and we need to now.
I mean, it's for me, I actually use it. So, for instance, this is it here.
But we've never had it available to buy.
We just didn't have the quantities. It sold so dang fast, and that's one of the things that I'm worried about with some of these other phones is, when these things get out, we've got to have a certain amount of pre-adoption now to be able to get the right amount of quantities to have it material as a product. Otherwise, it's just non-materialized.
Well, exactly. And that's why I came up with my suggestions earlier. But the thing is that then some people, I'm just telling you what I speak to so many people about this all the time. And they go, oh, I really like the Armor phone. When's that coming back out? And I go, I've never sold one, and I don't know anybody who actually got.
It's not going to. You're right.
So it's just there's things like that just need to be streamlined now. And it's like, we don't have a 220, we don't have a 420, and we don't have the Armor phone. And this stuff about, even Elon Musk as a person, even though he promotes things that we all agree with, and a bit like Andrew Tate, you might agree with some of the stuff he says, but you might not agree with all the stuff he says about various different topics. And we can cherry pick, but by aligning ourselves with somebody like him, he very much divides opinion within the truth movement. And so then, we're not even selling any of his products. And
we hurt ourselves because of it. So these are.
I'm just telling you, I know, because I speak to so many people about it, and your basic Joe blogs on the street type thing. And I just know I can provide you with the feedback and what I read between the lines when I chat to people. And I know that if, for example, we've got plenty of Freedom Phone stock, the 620 is too expensive for some people. Some people will go for the Freedom Phone, but if it's not incentivized with clear rewards, then people aren't going to bother pushing it. So it's like, you're just going to be sat there with a load of stock. No, so why don't we reward people for it?
Yeah. Okay. So some of the things I'm hearing is Freedom Phone tied to rewards. We can put a check mark on that. Get rid of the 220. Get rid of the 420. We can do both of those. Get rid of the Armor phone. We can do that. The tie with Elon, that's going to be a bigger thing that I can't actually go through right now. So just trust me on that one.
Okay.
The 622 and or 623 and 823 and 423 campaigns, we can get that stuff going before the next call. And what I would propose is we do some internal things so you can actually pad it, and that may need more time, but let's have an offline call separate from here.
Yeah.
And go through some of those. But
sorry, I know the people that are on this, and sorry to cut across you, Michael. I know the people that are on this are genuinely interested in this, and it's good for people to know that you take action on the stuff that we suggest that makes sense as well. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, so that people know that Clear do take the feedback on board and try and implement it. So
we do our
sorry
best.
To cut across you there.
No, we all are caring about the same thing. We do our best to try and listen, but we're aligned because we're so close to it. And to be honest with you, we've got to tighten down so that resources also are in the right place. And because we're focused on nations, we're not focused on, the historical Clear United type stuff. So there's a lot of things that are getting ignored, and the things that you're recommending right now are perfect. There's zero problems. We just need to implement it. So what I'll do is I'll put some energy and effort into it in the next 48, 72 hours. And then the next thing you know, within a week, the teams will get it all done. So
perfect. Can I just suggest one thing? Because you haven't slept a lot. Why don't you go get some rest and spend some time with your family and all that kind of stuff? And we'll just message on Clear Signal to organise to meet up tomorrow online at some stage.
For sure. Oh, that sounds good. That sounds great.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you, everyone, for feedback. I'll give an opportunity. Is there anyone that else has a question that they want to throw out, even though we're over time? But is there something that you feel needs to be mentioned? If not, or you can even interrupt this next part of it. But I want to put a shout out to Jimmy Levy and just thank him for continuing to stand up for truth, even though talk about media that talks trash and talk about an individual. So for those that are not aware, he went on American Idol, or I don't even know the name of it, but something like that. And he basically won it. And then Columbia signed him for, I think it was almost $10 million. And he got in and started seeing what was going on with Hollywood. And he just stood up and says, you know what, this stuff is sick. This is wrong. I can't have any part of it. Take your contract, take your money. And he went in and started literally just writing songs and singing songs that were based on truth. The initial ones, which we'll play one today, United We Stand, and about 3 other ones really took off. And then a lot of the stuff he's doing is just based upon, and he's hit a couple number one, I won't play them today, but within the last 60 days, he's had 2 of them hit number 1 on some of the charts. But this one, I just felt on July 4th, this is the right song to play. So here we go.
United we stand, but divided we fall. Evil won't stand a chance. We all know that God's in control. All the people of the world are joining hand in hand, 'cause all of the tyranny brought us back together again. So united we stand.
Trying to divide us brought us closer together. People that normally never, just trying to make the world better. Doctors, ball players, scientists, actors, rabbis, preachers, deacons, pastors, singers and rappers overcoming all their differences. The freedom to live your life regardless what your religion is. Masked up the children, shut down your businesses. Socially distancing didn't stop any sickness. Start listening to each other. Witness what you discover. We all sisters and brothers. You do not get another life to live, so embrace it, don't waste it. Every single struggle that they try to throw at us, we overcame it. Freedom, we had to take it. Matrix, we had to break it. Not the great reset, no, this is the great awakening. Holding on to your sanity, won't divide up the family. Muslim, Jew, Christianity. Let's get back to humanity.
United we stand, united we fall. Won't stand a chance. We all know that God's in control. All the people of the world are joining hand in hand, 'cause all of the tyranny brought us back together again. So united we stand.
They shut down the schools, churches, and temples too. Even if we disagree, every day I'm defending you. Yeah, it's someone else's problem until it's affecting you. All the trillions they send to other countries instead of you. Never been my need a man, God is who I'm dealing to. All the evil in the world, they trying to deceive the youth. They'll never know what it's like just to be me and you. It feel good waking up every morning and being true. Help each other stay afloat, don't let no one lose hope. I don't care your political party or how you vote. I want everyone to be happy with a life full of health. I hope you make enough to find generational wealth. You just gotta keep walking if you going through hell. And it doesn't make you weak if you asking for help. Don't let them tear us apart over nothing again. So let's all join hands, cause united we stand.
United we stand, divided we fall. People won't stand a chance. We all know that God's in control. People of the world, joining hand in hand. Cause all of the tyranny brought us back together again. So united we stand.
My hope and prayer would be the United States of America sees what its responsibility is. It's one thing to have a Statue of Liberty and have liberty, but it's a whole nother thing to have responsibility before liberty. And we need to be able to be strong as a nation, as the United States of America, to be able to continue to serve the rest of the world, not control, not demise. And that's one part of it. The other part of it is these other countries can stand up together. It's been very interesting to see over the last 6 months, 2 or 3 countries starting to work together on an initiative because they're seeing a future that they can actually impact. And whether we're talking about these countries on here, whether it's the top or the bottom, the middle or the east or the west, we're all in this together and we're all affected by it. Look at what COVID did to the world. Look what it did to humanity and generations and education. So I appreciate those that come on, that pray for us, that care about us, that are us, because we are all together. It's not a you or me or them it's us, it's we, it's all of us as humanity can actually make a difference with this. So we'll see you next week. Have a wonderful 4th of July, and thank you for all you do and stand for. Much love, everybody. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.